Alright guys, today's video is going to be a little bit different, but it's a really important video that I took some time to make here. And the first thing I want to ask you to do is that if you are a PlayStation fan, if you are somebody who is excited for the PS5 and maybe you're a little bit annoyed at the conversations that have been happening ever since Mark Cerny did his deep dive technical talk about everything that makes up the PS5, I'm going to encourage you to leave this video a like and make sure you also share it out. I want to try to get it out there because what I did is I came across another video that comes from a channel called Coreteks. Now this is a PC enthusiast channel where they talked about the PS5 and the next generation Xbox, but they did an absolutely phenomenal job in breaking things down and more specifically explaining what the PS5 is doing that people are greatly underestimating and how it's actually going to potentially dominate the next generation, because Mark Cerny made some very, very critical moves that are going to really change up what we expect from games and what developers are going to be able to do for games. And I've seen so much pushback, it's not even funny. Anybody who is a PlayStation fan who is excited about the PS5, I know you guys see what I'm talking about. It's just dominated the conversation where everybody thinks that the PS5 is some kind of paperweight, weak console that's not going to do anything for games, and if you try to defend it, you're just damage controlling or you're just being a fanboy. And so I wanted to cut out some of the really important parts of this video of what this individual had to say. And I want to let you know that I'm going to leave his video down below in the pinned comment. I encourage you to go click on it, watch it. It's kind of long, it's like 45 minutes, and it does get pretty technical. But go show your support, leave the video a like, watch it obviously, share it out, subscribe to this person's channel because they do some really good work. But I had to take some time here to share this with you guys because it's absolutely vital information, in my opinion, that is being explained here about the PlayStation 5. And so with that being said, make sure you leave your thoughts down below, and now I'm gonna leave it to Coreteks.
Again, to me these look identical. I expect 36 compute units at 2.23 GHz to perform about the same as 52 compute units at 1.825 GHz, with a few percentage points between them. Remember, these are not compute-focused machines, they are designed to run games, and compute capability is only one contributor to the overall performance. There are highly parallel operations that benefit from more compute units, for instance ray tracing, which scales very well with more cores, and here the Xbox could have an advantage. But I suspect that if you put a multi-platform game side by side, even one that uses ray tracing, you won't be able to tell these two consoles apart. The differences will be so minimal that you'll be hard-pressed to identify which console is which in a blind test. Having said that, the real difference between the two systems is when it comes to the I/O. The Xbox can transfer 4.8 gigs per second of compressed data, while the PS5 can transfer up to 9 gigs per second of compressed data in burst mode. And this is where things get interesting. In my opinion, Sony has won the console war right here, if they hadn't already based on their brand alone. Now, I rarely cover console hardware, and honestly I have zero interest in who wins in the console space. I couldn't care less. I'm giving you my opinion based on information that is publicly available and not so publicly available. Nothing more. I know console fanboys are even worse than GPU fanboys, so I feel like I need to add that disclaimer in. But here's why I feel like Sony's console will come out ahead. To me, this slide is the key differentiator between the two consoles, and the reason why the PS5 will offer games that simply aren't possible on any other platform, including the PC. Low latency, high bandwidth access for the SSD and memory subsystem. This was something that was introduced in RDNA 1 and will be even more prominent in RDNA 2. And although it might seem innocuous compared to specs like CPU count or frequency, low latency and high bandwidth have been one of the key advantages in Nvidia's Turing architecture, despite being a node behind compared to AMD. And this is something that AMD is now copying from its main competitor. This is more important than pure computation capability. Now, you might think that the reason NVIDIA dedicated precious silicon space to have not one but two accelerators just to compress and decompress data is because they want to fit more data in memory, right? Well, no. The reason NVIDIA added fixed function accelerators just for compression and decompression of data was because of bandwidth, so that the data could be accessed more quickly. This is key to getting more performance in future processors, and Sony identified this bottleneck and has focused on mitigating it in the PS5, in detriment of having more compute units in the GPU, for instance. This was the right call. It's not just subterfuge from Sony to try and brush off Microsoft's advantage in compute unit count. Mark Cerny is 100% correct in his assessment of what design decisions are going to affect performance the most in these machines. You see, the biggest bottleneck in performance in modern processors is not related to the computation itself, it's in the communication. Most people seem fixated on this idea of compute unit count and frequency being indicators of performance in an age where that matters very little. The marketing departments at these companies love to have the bigger numbers, but we've gotten to a point where that's not really as important as it used to be. Listen to what the GPU market leader has to say on that matter. Continuing, memory is expensive and communication is prohibitively expensive, energy-wise. This is why Sony focused their architecture deep dive on discussing the relationship between the SSD and the memory subsystem of the console and how it can free developers to create new experiences. Arithmetic is free, memory and communication is expensive, and Sony is adopting a similar philosophy, focusing much more of their PS5 microarchitecture on I/O than the Series X is. To me, this will be a key advantage for Sony's machine. Now, something that's of particular interest to us PC enthusiasts is this slide from the Sony presentation, and here things get a bit worrying for us PC gamers. You see, more than the Xbox, the PS5 will be capable of creating games that are simply not possible on current PCs because of the variability in hardware on our platform. Every PS5 user will have a fast NVMe drive that's required for this low latency, high bandwidth memory access. On the PCs, some users will have even faster drives, yes, but the majority will stick to commodity SSDs. So games on the PC have to target the lowest common denominator. Don't underestimate how much this will make a difference in the types of games we will see on the PS5 that won't make it onto PC due to technical constraints. A couple of weeks ago I released a video talking about the A64FX chip, and I covered the importance of domain-specific hardware. When they see Zen 2 and RDNA 2 on the specs sheets, some people seem to think that these next-gen consoles are just PCs, but that couldn't be further from the truth. These SoCs and the additional accelerators on these consoles are domain-specific. They are unique to consoles and specialized for gaming workloads. Some of the IP will transition to PC, yes, but not all of the accelerators will. A good example is the DMA controller on the PS5, which has 12 channels. This is incredibly expensive from a transistor count standpoint. The Series X has 3 DMA channels, which are part of the SoC, so that alone will probably make the PS5 system overall more expensive to manufacture. I would imagine that Sony shopped around for a cheap custom controller, and with volume they will manage to keep costs under control. But a 12-channel DMA is not a cheap thing to include on a console, but makes perfect sense given what I've already discussed regarding communication. As finally, just a quick word on the Tempest 3D audio custom solution on the PS5, which Sony claims is based on a compute unit from an unspecified AMD GPU technology. I think this is just AMD's True Audio Next, which replaced the custom DSP chip that AMD used in the past with GPU compute for audio in these last couple of generations of GPUs. We haven't really seen this utilized much in PC games, but I like Sony's vision for this. To me, the factors that affect the gaming experience the most are the ones related to your primary senses, so that's vision and hearing. So a good display and good sound will make a much greater difference to your gaming experience than slightly faster GPUs or CPUs will. These consoles are offering absolutely insane value in comparison, and when we look at what sort of games the PS5 in particular will be able to deliver, things really look a bit grim for the PC market. First hint at how the new memory subsystem will allow developers to create new gaming experiences came from a developer demo that surfaced online last year, showing instantaneous asset streaming. This simply isn't possible unless you have that memory coherency and the ability to use that crazy fast SSD with on-the-fly accelerated data decompression. So all of the elements that Sony highlighted in the PS5 technical presentation come together in this demo. This will allow for completely seamless open-world games with no loading screens, and the player character movement speed could be explored to create new types of games, from super fast racing games in open-world environments with an order of magnitude more assets than previous games in that genre, and other types of games we haven't even imagined where scale is important. Perhaps something where you zoom from a galaxy scale down to a planet scale, down to a molecular scale really quickly and with an insane level of detail at each level. This simply won't be possible on the PC because not everyone will have access to Gen 4 super fast SSDs, and it won't be possible on the Series X because Microsoft doesn't have the same level of hyper focus on I/O. If you remember, in that same Coreteks, AMD talked about their relationship with Sony, and Lisa Su explicitly talked about how Mark Cerny wanted to revolutionize gaming in the next decade. I suspect that this demo, which is now part of 3D Mark's PCIe feature test benchmark, was hinting at the sort of things we will be seeing on next-gen consoles, particularly the PS5. Again, that level of bandwidth is something that console developers will be able to leverage, but that won't be available on PC due to the variability in PC hardware. It's a bit worrying to think that there might be some really awesome games on the PS5 that won't be able to be ported to the PC. Hopefully the console will be affordable enough so that we can have the best of both worlds. Now there's a third demo that's worth covering. I did say earlier that I would come back to the PS5's ray tracing capabilities, although there's very little information on this one, and it's from a game that was originally announced for the PS4. I think it's worth looking into. The reveal trailer for it actually looked like gameplay, and it looked far beyond what's possible on the PS4. I'm talking about Project Awakening from Japanese developer Cygames, who doesn't have a presence in the West, but it's huge in Asia. Project Awakening was initially planned for the PS4, but I think this is the game that Mark Cerny mentioned as being performing well on the PS5 with ray tracing active, and I think the announcement trailer was actually gameplay footage. In a recent interview, the lead developer for the game said this will be a massive open-world action RPG with seamless transitions from every area of the game. From the graphics and this detail that the dev mentioned, to me that sounds like a PS5 game. The demo is certainly impressive, especially the global illumination, which does indeed look ray-traced. So these three demos, especially the first two, set pretty high expectations for the next generation of games.